we're not just going to look at the guidelines and checkboxes, but we're also going to look at the usability because we understand the impact to our community of users, which includes me.
Matt Ater discusses Vispero's approach to accessibility.
All you need to do is whisper into the machine.
Mohammed Laachir introduces agentic AI, here on Vispero Connect for June 2026. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Vispero Connect, a new series of podcasts from Vispero. I'm Oleg Shevkun, and I think right now it's a good time to tell you what's new and what is still the same. First of all, it's the same company, the same people. We'll be talking about the same product, not quite. We'll be talking about developed products and developing products and soon to be developed products. We will be featuring interviews with people behind the products, in development, in product management, in testing, in technical support, in training, and other areas of the company. We will also be featuring interviews from people in the blindness and low vision community. So those things remain the same. By the way, if you were subscribed to FSCast, you may have seen that the feed name has changed, but you are still subscribed and you're still getting those episodes as they are released. So that's pretty much what's the same. Now, what's new? That's, of course, the name of the podcast, Vispero Connect. That means we do want to connect with you. And the logo of the podcast has changed. The intros and outros of the podcast have also changed. You've heard some of that. You will hear some more of this later in this episode. Now, another thing that has changed is the address that you use to contact us. The new address to reach us is connect@vispero.com. Once again, that address is connect@vispero.com. And I'm still wondering who will send the first email to this address. So once again, that's connect@vispero.com. On the day this podcast episode is released, we're also releasing our June updates to JAWS, ZoomText, and Fusion. In fact, these updates come with some really exciting features, and let me take a couple of minutes to talk about them. First of all, for those in the United States who need to create a Vispero account, there is now a grace period of 30 days before you are required to either create an account or to log in. When you start JAWS for the first time on a computer that's not logged into a Vispero account, you'll get a prompt that the grace period is 30 days. In that time, you can either log into an existing Vispero account or create a new one. You remember that in the past, you had 1 hour to complete the process, and then you could ask for an additional hour. Now, we've heard from our customers loud and clear, and that's no longer the way it works. Once again, you start a product, you're asked to either create an account or log into an account, but you have 30 days to do so. Another new feature we have in this update is exactly one of the reasons to use a Vispero account. And that feature allows you to sync your settings to the cloud. To use that, you must first open the EAP, or Early Adopter Program dialog, and in that dialog, there's now a new checkbox called Cloud Settings Sync. Before you check that, though, I would strongly urge you to go to the JAWS window and then Utilities menu and take one last look at the good old item called Import-Export Settings. Because as soon as you activate the Cloud Settings Sync feature, the menu item is also going to change, and something new will be added to that submenu. So after activating Cloud Settings Sync, you will notice something different at the first restart of the product. And that is, if you've modified your settings, and I'm pretty sure you have, JAWS will pop up a prompt asking you if you want to save those settings to the cloud. If you agree, then your settings will be uploaded. And the next time you reinstall JAWS on that computer or on another computer, you will be asked if you would like to sync with the cloud. That is, your saved settings will be applied automatically. Now, there's a very good reason why I asked you to take one last look at that import-export settings menu item. Because if you go to the Utilities menu after enabling the Cloud Sync feature, the menu item will have changed, and it is now Sync and Transfer Settings. And there, you will be able to sync now or to manage cloud settings. Now, this feature is still in development. For example, if you've got a vocalizer voice installed on one of the machines and you want to synchronize with another machine, then you will have to install vocalizer manually. At this time, the Cloud Sync feature will not pull and install the relevant voice for you. However, we are working on improving the Cloud Sync experience, and we do want to hear from you. So please let us know what you think by using the feedback form on the EAP dialog. Now, talking about feedback, Vispero will be actively present at both NFB and ACB conventions this year. So if you're going to Austin, Texas for NFB or to St. Louis, Missouri for ACB, please make sure to find us there. Not only will we be exhibiting and doing sessions, but we will also have our training suite. And in that training suite, we're looking forward to showcasing some of the technology which was introduced on this podcast a couple of months ago. So whether you're going to be at ACB or NFB, we cordially invite you to use this opportunity to connect with Vispero.
Vispero Connect, accessibility in action.
The name of Matt Ater came up on a recent episode of FSCast, and in fact, we've been planning to interview him on FSCast, but that never came to be. Well, we're interviewing Matt Ater on Vispero Connect now. Hey Matt, hello and welcome to the show.
Hey Oleg, how are you doing today?
Doing pretty well. How about you?
Wonderful.
So your title here says Senior Vice President Business Development. What does that mean?
Basically, my role is to work with customers to make sure that we are bringing them the right opportunities, making sure that our technology is meeting everybody's needs, and then identifying new solutions and opportunities for our business to grow. And so, as an example, we got asked by companies, can we make kiosks more accessible? And, it made sense. Like, we have the technology, we have the expertise, and, we had to learn a little bit more, but we learned it and we created more stuff. So based on my relationships and goals are to meet with the community, meet with industry, and figure out how do we solve problems as a company for those companies. And those may be general accessibility. They may be something related to assistive technology. Think of it as somebody who goes and engages with all of our large and potentially not large, but some new customers to figure out how our solutions can help them, which is ultimately what customers need.
Is that part of Vispero's work, working with larger customers? Does that have any benefit to a home user?
Yeah, think of, work that we may do with any large business. Every single one of us is touching those businesses every day, whether it's a browser, an operating system, a application for productivity, social media. Those are some of the big businesses. If we weren't in there consulting with them and making them better, then you wouldn't be able to use their platforms. We're not just going to look at the guidelines and checkboxes, but we're also going to look at the usability because we understand the impact to our community of users, which includes me. I'm a user of JAWS every day. I use Fusion, actually, so both JAWS and ZoomText, and have lived with being blind since I was 6. I'm not going to go out there and try to do something, and I don't believe our company would, to make it such that we're only focusing on large businesses. Part of our ultimate goal, and let's remember the name of JAWS, what it stood for was Job Access with Speech, is to get technology to work so that blind people can work. And so that was always Ted's view of it. And I believe we're still continuing that path. And some of the features and things that we build every day aren't necessarily just for businesses. They're for the user to work, they're users to go to school, and the users to play.
You're definitely not a newcomer to the field of access technology. In fact, in a recent interview, Olga Espinola, or I should say Olga Espinola, mentioned working with you in the 90s. Could you tell some more of your story and how you got involved in this field?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, the beginning of anything starts with a connection to this community. Rarely does somebody just land in this community without some level of connection. And being blind myself, has a connection to this industry. I was using video magnifiers all the way through elementary school, high school, and university, and started learning screen readers in college when things were really improving in that space. And granted, this was still the DOS days, this wasn't Windows. And helped the university get the technology so that I could do better at school. And when graduating, I was, a degree in broadcasting. I was never going to be the shock jock, never going to be on air, even though I may have wanted to be and thought it was cool. I also realized it takes a long time to build a career in that space when you went to college in rural Alabama. And so when graduating, I tried everything I could to get in TV and radio, and it just wasn't panning out. And I eventually got hired to work on a project for the Internal Revenue Service in the U.S. to travel around the country and train their blind and low vision employees on how to use this technology. And after a couple of years, I got hired by an agency in the Washington, D.C. area called the Columbia Lighthouse for the Blind, and I stood up their technology program. And as part of that, we started training blind and low vision people all around the country again, but it wasn't just me. We were now at this point, this is the revolution of Windows and JAWS for Windows and things of that nature. And we got hired to go train the blind and low vision employees, both at the IRS and Social Security Administration, which were thousands of employees around the country. And to do that, I needed a team, and I went out there and hired somewhere in the neighborhood of about 40 blind and low vision people to travel around the country for basically 2 years and train blind and low vision people at these agencies how to move from DOS to Windows. And Olga was one of those trainers, and she did an amazing job. But I feel a lot of pride in those couple years, not just because we helped people transition from DOS to Windows to be able to keep their jobs, but we also helped 40 people get careers in teaching screen reading and things like that. So we built curriculum and taught the instructors, and the instructors went out and started teaching and helping the users through very complex experiences because they were used to WordPerfect. If they got asked a question about, let's say, a tax law, in today's world, you just go into a database and you type in the tax law and boom, it comes up and explains it to you. And then you can let the customer know over the phone how to deal with that. Back then they would roll back in their chair. There would be 4 people in a pod, and they'd have like a wall of Braille books, and they would find that book on that tax law, grab it, come back over to their chair, to the table, to the computer, and talk to the person on the phone to explain, what that tax law meant to them. And so think of the transition from that to using a computer for the first time in a real world environment and not a computer for some basic use. There's major transition. As we all know, moving to Windows was a new world. And so, again, I feel a lot of pride at what we did those years to, 1, help people keep jobs, and 2, train people to be trainers. And so think of 40 new trainers developed, and some of them may have already been training, but I had to find people who are, 1, willing to travel, willing to live in hotels for weeks at a time. It was a fun time. I remember a time when I had 10 people in Nashville and 30 people in Indianapolis, and I was flying back and forth between the 2 cities. They're not that far apart, but it was puddle jumper flights. And for those who don't know what that means, it's a plane with propellers, not a plane with jets. And so I was doing that almost on an every other day basis, keeping classes going. And this isn't like classroom instruction. It's one-on-one instruction at people's desks.
Matt, would you say you're adventurous?
Not in the, I'm never going to go do like hang gliding and climbing ropes and things like that, but adventurous in terms of willing to take a chance to make things happen for people. Yes. Willing to travel around the world to solve these problems. Yes. Willing to travel on my own, yes. But don't ask me to go live on an island with a pot and that's it.
The reason I'm asking is what does it take to meet with a group of corporate representatives and try to convince them or persuade them about the need for accessibility, not just as a quote-unquote welfare gesture, but as a genuine need? And they may push back, and you have to be strong. Do you ever feel like you're going into a battle, or is it more like negotiations? Or do you ever feel shy and what I'm going to do?
I've never felt shy about trying to solve these problems. The beauty is that most employers want to keep their employees. The cost of getting new employees is greater than the cost of keeping an employee. There was an airline a few years back who changed their computer systems, and they had, 50 blind and low vision employees who were working on the old systems. And when they changed the new ones, the employees were no longer able to use them because they didn't plan for that. And so about, 6 or 8 months in, they contact us. I don't remember the exact amount of time. And they said, we have this problem. Our employees can't do their core job. They're doing different jobs for now, and we need to get them back to doing their core jobs. Can you help us do that? They wanted to do it because it made sense. That's an easy business to help. The ones who are harder are the ones who don't have a blind employee to help push this topic. And I think of another one, and this one I can say the name of it is Crutchfield, which is a technology distribution sales company. Probably, if you think about Amazon being so big as they are today, Crutchfield was like selling, TVs and things like that and computers and all kinds of tech stuff before that online. And, they had a blind employee who needed to solve, be able to help them be able to do their job. And through that, it also helped them make sure that their website was better and more compliant for customers. And, I've met Bill since, the CEO and founder of the company, and he's thrilled every day that experience is such a positive one for both the employee and the customers. And so those are the easy ones. The hard ones is the ones who get in trouble for their website. And sadly, there's some companies who are really at fault, and there's some companies who are just a little bit, but they didn't know any better. I think that in most cases, if you called up a company and said, I can't use your website, and if you get to the right people, that's the other question, is that most companies want to do the right thing. It doesn't mean they always do the right thing. It just means that they would want to. And we as people in the blind community have to figure out how to communicate in a way that's not a threatening kind of experience, but more of a collaborative kind of experience for companies. And that's something that I get to do every day without being threatening to them, because that's not our goal. Our goal is to help them be more successful and to realize that the blind community is an avenue to sell more products to if things are done right. It is true that sometimes things can't be done quickly. I think of tech that you probably use, like a Zoom recorder, and the level of effort that company did through great communication with Jonathan and others. And probably when they got the biggest push was during the pandemic, when we were all using this technology. Everybody wanted to be a new podcaster. Everybody wanted to get on that Clubhouse and stuff like that. And so we all started using.
Sir, you were in Clubhouse big time. So everybody, including you.
And I bought a Zoom device just for that, with a nice microphone and everything. And so, but there are chances that you have to just say, you know what, I will go take my business somewhere else. And I think of a pizza place in the United States who got a lawsuit, and they fought it all the way to the Supreme Court and lost. But the cost for them to fix the website was probably a lot less than fighting the lawsuit. Okay, they could have just fixed the website. They didn't have to keep fighting it and appealing it and taking it all the way to the Supreme Court. And the answer to me at that point is take my business somewhere else. There is other pizza and probably better pizza than what they were selling. And when my daughter says to me, I wanted to order that pizza, my response is, you can't order it because this company didn't feel that a blind customer was relevant to them. And so then she doesn't buy their pizza. And then later one of her friends say, hey, let's order that pizza. And my daughter says, no, you can't, because they would not make their website compliant so that my father could order pizza from it. And then that friend then takes it onto their family, and it becomes like a chain of, not the point that we're all protesting in front of the store, but you can take your business somewhere else, and that changes the mindset of that business. And that's really the best we can do. And if they don't change, so be it. There's 30 more pizza places to choose from. And so we have to pick our battles, I think. And I'm not suggesting that lawsuits don't happen, and I'm not suggesting lawsuits aren't the right things to do, because they are in some cases. But if there's choice and you have the opportunity, I'm not saying don't go still fight those companies, but one way to fix the problem is take your business somewhere else. And sometimes that will work. So again, I'm not suggesting you don't push those companies, continue to do it, reach out to them, explain to them that there's an entire population out here who can spend money on technology and things if things are accessible. And sometimes money helps them understand that. And sometimes people just want to do the right thing.
When we think of Vispero, most of our listeners would first think of JAWS, ZoomText, and Fusion. But there are also JAWS kiosks. And a few years ago, we talked about the McDonald's JAWS kiosks. And as recently as last week, I went here in Germany to an automated post station. That's a post kiosk that allows you to send or receive post or to purchase stamps and so on. And there's a headphone jack, and I plug it in and it says, please wait. And then it just comes up talking. So we have a talking kiosk. Tell us more about what Vispero is doing and where you could, or where our customer could, see our talking kiosks now and in the very near future.
We started this probably 2017 or so back. It's been a while. Ryan Jones and I kind of kicked this stuff off with some projects in the United States, and some of them went international. The basics of it is, and I think it's really key to realize that, what we're looking at in this case is, how do we create more public accommodations? Because whether you go to a restaurant that only has a kiosk and that's the only way to order, or you're using self-checkout at a grocery store, you want to check your blood pressure at a pharmacy, you want to check into the pharmacy, these are all use cases. And I think of them as anything where you cannot add your own text-to-speech or screen reader to the device, or one that doesn't have it. And so Europe has been famous for payment devices that come to the table, whereas the U.S., the U.S. is probably more, let me take your card and run it in the back and then bring your card and your slip back to sign. Well, why aren't those devices accessible? So for the last probably 4 years, we've been deploying JAWS for kiosk on payment devices. So if you find a headphone jack on a payment device that you're being brought to your table at a restaurant, you should plug in headphones. You may need a 3.5, you may use a USB-C depending on the device. And if it doesn't talk, you need to ask the company, and the server's not going to be the answer. You're going to have to get to the manager and say, why aren't these accessible so that I can put my tip in? I can do my own independent pen, things of that nature, follow the instructions and know what I'm paying. That's what JAWS for Kiosk will do. It's not just something to order food. It's not just a check-in kiosk at an airport. Some hotels have kiosks to check in. In today's world, we're not going to get away with just being able to order at a counter or just be able to go to a counter to get my ticket printed and things like that. You have to be prepared for different options, because the queues are long, the challenges in airports, whatever it may be that you may face. There's self-checkout that has no people. There's places where you go and you just grab something off the shelf, you go up to the thing, you lay it down on the tray, and then it scans it, and then you tap your card and you walk out. But if you can't see, you don't know what you just paid. You don't even know if you got the right item. And so that's kind of what we're trying to accomplish. And it could be, depending on where in the world you are, voting a machine as well. And that's our right to know what we're voting for. Vending machines today have kiosks on the front of them. They're not just press A1 for a bag of chips anymore that are buttons on the side of the screen, which, by the way, weren't accessible either way because you didn't know what was in there, and you didn't know which button was A and you didn't know which button was 1. But today, we can do more with a tablet attached to the front of one of those. So one of the projects we did was Pokemon. And yes, these are to buy Pokemon cards, which, for those who like to collect those cards, they could walk up to one of these vending machines, plug in their headphones because there's a headphone jack, and either use the keypad or use the touchscreen to navigate to pick out the cards, know what you're paying. It would tell you when to tap your card or insert your card and then spit the cards, the Pokemon cards out. I was in an airport the other day, and to buy Legos, you used a vending machine. So if I wanted Legos or wanted to buy my child Legos, I would have to use a vending machine today to do that. And so that's the kind of stuff that we're doing every day to make sure that accessibility gets driven into these kind of public-facing technologies.
Now, to make sure we're clear on this, that is still the path of discovery. I mean, if you see a machine, like a vending machine, there's no guarantee it's going to be accessible. B, there's no guarantee that the accessibility can be turned on. But you do want to try and feel around if you can find a 3.5 jack for the headphones. Would that be your approach, or how do you do it?
Yeah, and I would carry those headphones everywhere you go, and whenever you're traveling by yourself or you're with somebody, walk up to one and try it. And in the UK, there's a Five Guys kiosk, which is a burger joint. You can plug in your headphones and totally use it. There's a keypad you can navigate through the screen, add items to your order, pay for it completely, and then either go up to the counter to get your food, or depending on the venue, they may tell you to scan a QR code on the table tent, and then they'll come find you with your food. So the Deutsche Post that you mentioned is a good example. We're just continuing to launch across Europe. Eventually, we'll have McDonald's locations around Europe. I guess, my answer is that if you find a headphone jack, try it. And if it doesn't work, ask why. Because a lot of times people assume physical accessibility is all they have to do. So put the keypad on it, check the box, I'm done. It goes back to kind of checking the box for accessibility in general. Let's just make our job easy. Let's just check a box and walk away. Well, no, there's more to do than that. You need to add the screen reader. You need to make sure that the application works, and is usable. And that's what our team helps do, and we partner with others to do the same.
You've been advocating for accessibility back in the 90s. You're advocating for accessibility now. What has changed, and what remains the constant?
Computing in the 90s, it was mostly just computers, right? And this is before the web became so big, and now we're dealing with mobile phones, mobile apps, self-service technology. There's screens everywhere you go. In my hotel room in Las Vegas, to shut the blinds, I have to use a tablet. In my hotel room, in that same hotel room, to order food, you can't pick up the phone, you have to use a tablet. To check out or to look at my bill, the tablet. And most of us would say, oh, good, just turn on VoiceOver. It doesn't work that way. These are locked down devices where nothing is enabled. And so accessibility of things more broadly is what has changed. I mean, your stove could be an Android tablet. You may control your stove from an app on your phone. You could start and stop your washing machine today with a phone, but those apps have to be accessible. And so this is where the opportunity is finding companies who are accessible and sharing that with others. And then if other companies don't join the bandwagon and do the same thing, then we move on and use the ones that do. And so we have an opportunity as an industry, as a people who are blind, is to work with the vendors and the partners to say, I'm going to work with the ones who have already chosen to be there, and then push the rest to join the band at some point.
Some of us might be thinking of Vispero as just the company that makes JAWS, or ZoomText, or Fusion, or my Braille display. Yet Vispero's mission is a lot bigger than that. What is it?
I mean, it's really just to drive accessibility across every platform and to be there as the voice of the customer, the end customer. And if we think about it from a blind and low vision perspective, it's really we want to ensure that our users of our tech can actually access anything. And I think that's why we're unique compared to other accessibility or consulting firms is that we also make technology that blind people use every day. And so if that technology we build, JAWS, ZoomText Fusion, Focus Braille displays, whatever it may be, needs to work with those, things, devices, websites, mobile apps, and so on. Just because I use JAWS on my PC, I still use VoiceOver on my phone. I check into a hotel using the app. I sometimes even open the door to my hotel using the app. But those are experiences that I should be able to do. I think the main thing is we don't just only focus on the JAWS experience when it comes to accessibility, because it may not be Windows or one of our devices. It may be more broadly an experience. And so an example could be an elevator. Now there are touch screens, and you got to use a touch screen to use an elevator. Well, they may not be willing to put JAWS on it. So we have to figure out how to work with them to ensure that it's fully accessible and provides the proper experience. And this is the fun part. Like, it gets you excited. When you find somebody who really wants to do it, it's so much fun. I was working with a company in France last week, UK 2 weeks ago, Belgium this week, trying to look at how do we solve this stuff for them. And they're excited and want to do it, which is so much fun. I want to hear from the customers. And a while back, and you probably remember this, Oleg, I was running the software group, and that was during the pandemic era.
Oh, yeah.
That it was during those Clubhouse days. We were doing things like the Power of JAWS tips to kind of continue to help people understand all the great features we were doing. But we were also working on features that users needed. I think of split audio as one that we did because when users got shipped home from work because they closed the offices during the pandemic, they no longer had the technology that they were using at work, which was sometimes a desk phone with a splitter between the desk phone and the computer. Mm-hmm. And their headsets did both, one in one ear and one in the other. It seems so small. It's just splitting sound. But that's a huge part of what we do by listening to the customer. And when we're talking to the customer, we come out with tools that they need. Picture Smart's another example. And so when people think of us just looking at B2B, but that B2C is what drives the B2B. The business to customer scenario. Us listening to our customers help us come up with solutions that help the business as well.
Matt Ater, Senior Vice President for Business Development here at Vispero. Thanks for being with us, Matt.
Thank you, Oleg.
So I recently experienced quite a bit of a shock from hearing just one statement. And the statement was, if you cannot spin off your own AI agent, then you don't know how to use AI in 2026. And I was stunned. I remember a couple of years ago, the beauty and the wonder was how AI could answer your questions. Then the wonder was how it could describe images, pictures. Then the wonder was how it was able to help you navigate web pages. And now AI agents, and my first response was, it's got to be for programmers, for developers, for the techno nerds. And I wanted to explore because the shock would not leave me for a few days. So I'm reaching out to Mohammed Laachir, and in the past we brought in Mohammed asking him to talk about JAWS AI-based features, and that will happen, but not today. Today, I want to get over the shock, and Mohammed would be the best buddy to do that. Hey, Mohammed, welcome to Vispero Connect.
Hello, Oleg. Very nice to be here at this inaugural episode of Vispero Connect. But of course, it leans on a long tradition of a Festcast. So glad to be back.
Yeah. So, Mohammed, that statement, the knowledge of AI or the use of AI in 2026 has got to be agentic. On the scale from 1 to 10, 1 being strongly disagree and 10 strongly agree, where would you put this?
I would put this at an 8. I believe that in this year, you should at least try to learn to work with agents and try to understand what agents are, depending on your ambitions. So if you are striving to get into the workplace, striving to understand where work is going and what it will look like in the future, then it's probably not even an 8, but a 9. If you are looking for concrete, easy to build solutions right now, I would say that statement, the agreement is more at a 6 at this moment because you do need to set some things up, but it's remarkably easy. And I think a lot of people are starting to catch on to the fact that it's remarkably easy to do that. And it brings the dream a bit closer of having a computer that basically is able to anticipate what you need and get things done on your behalf while you are doing other things.
You mentioned work, so this comes to the whole question of employability. Well, in the past, the workhorses would be things like Microsoft Word or Outlook or Excel or Google Docs, and they still are. Would you consider, though, that very shortly in a job interview, a candidate who is not necessarily a programmer would be asked to build their own agent?
I think it's possible that that will happen. So the beauty about an agent, and I think this is about AI in general, is how generalizable it is. An agent or an AI can basically, an AI system, an LLM system can describe pictures of any sort, right? You do not necessarily need pictures of animals and give them to the animal AI, or pictures of buildings and give them to the building AI. Such AIs do exist, but they are much more specialized than just that. There are generalized LLMs that are perfectly capable of describing any picture. And that is the same for agents. So agents that have been built for coding initially, and therefore you also hear products like Claude Code or Codex, that heavily emphasize coding. But they were built for coding, yes. And when people started to use them, they actually found out that, like with the picture situation, where an LLM-based system was able to describe all sorts of pictures, an agent system is actually able to do all sorts of tasks. So it can draft and send Teams or Slack or WhatsApp messages on your behalf. It can write your emails and even send them on your behalf if you wanted to. It can browse the web. It can do all sorts of things. They are building newer and newer tools for it to use. And what is basically happening is we are finding out that a specialized system that was built specially for coders actually turns out to be able to do a lot more for non-coders too.
So you've just helped me to overcome some of the initial shock. Let's go into definitions, though. What's an AI agent, and how is it fundamentally different from a language model that will just give an answer to your question or will just describe a picture? Isn't that an agent as well? Because, after all, it goes out, it searches for information for you, and it delivers that information to you. So how are agents different, the ones that we're talking about now?
Right. So if we go back to not necessarily a pre-AI era, because AI has been around for a long time, but a pre-LLM era, the new generation of AI systems that we are talking about right now. Coding teams, development teams used to build agents all the time. We would call them software agents. And what those agents would do is there would be a repeatable task that would be very automatable. For example, fetching something from one database, putting it into another database, and spitting out a report and emailing it to person X, Y, and Z. Those software agents would be developed, created, just using normal code. And they would be put, for example, on a timer. So once a day, this agent goes out, looks at one database, pulls out all the relevant data, puts it in another one, generates the report, sends it out, and then goes to sleep again. And then tomorrow night at 12 a.m., you would do the same. These agents are basically now evolving into the same sort of system, but with LLMs, AI, baked in. That means that all of a sudden, these systems don't just need hard-coded rules to work with, but they can actually make judgments based on what the LLM can decide, right? So if you ask an LLM a question, it goes out and it thinks and it tries to find information for you, either in its training set or it goes out into the web and finds things for you and tries to answer the question in a way that you can understand. Well, now, if this software agent asks the LLM for information, The LLM does the same thing for the agent, but then formats the answer or the direction in a way that the software agent understands. So let's say now instead of having an agent that pulls data out of one database and puts it into another, the agent can actually choose from three databases. Based on what data it pulls out of the database, what data is available, it needs to choose. Do I go to database 1, 2, or 3? Now, instead of the developer having to create a bunch of rules to go out and decide based on the data where to put that, it can just ask the LLM. And the LLM can say, oh, this type of data needs to go into database 3. And there you go. Your software agent is now LLM-based and can make actual decisions based on softer rules that someone just writes down. How does this translate? So this translates in a way that you can, for example, create an agent that says, and you can tell it because you can use soft rules because the LLM is now the judge. So you can use soft rules like, oh, if I get a bunch of emails from Oleg, I want to summarize all the emails that are about test failures. Leave out all the other emails. Instead of me having to write code rules to, basically go search through the emails for test failure or test, instead, what I can do is tell the LLM. And now you have a software agent that asks the LLM, and then it pulls out all the emails that are necessary and summarizes them for me. Now, if I set that to a timer, for example, I have a software agent that uses an LLM. And these are AI agents, and they can get very complex and extremely useful.
Isn't there something missing, though, in your explanation? How does an agent talk to a piece of software like Outlook? Should there be a language or an interface or an API that your software should support in order to talk to an agent?
So the beauty about the way agents work now is that LLMs are smart enough to figure it out, usually. So if you ask them, I need my agent to be able to talk to Outlook, it can give you advice on how to do it. And in fact, it can help you build or even build that integration for you. And there are a bunch of ways that this is being done. But the fact of the matter is that as a non-technical person, you do not even need to know. The agent knows this for you.
So essentially, if I want, I could say, hey, take a look at my Outlook emails. And when something comes from the boss, send me a text message or ring my phone or make a bridge between different applications if I wanted to. And then it's up to the LLM to figure out whether that's possible and if so, how.
Exactly. So, for example, right, when a message comes in from my boss, if it asks me questions about X, Y, or Z, send me a text. If it's something else, then I don't need a text message. I'll read that whenever I come to my computer. But if, for example, he's asking me a direct question, well, now I do want a text message because I want to answer quickly. These are all sorts of things you can do.
So then the ways to apply this will be only limited by your own imagination. I mean, it's actually the matter of developing the tastes and figuring out how AI agents could fit into your schedule, into your workflow, rather than expecting somebody to give you a 1, 2, 3 list of things that you can do with an agent. Would that be accurate?
Yes, that would be accurate. And this is a term that comes up a lot on YouTube by people who are using this technology as well. All you need to do is whisper into the machine, right? You can either dictate or type into it, and it will help you figure out how to do certain things.
Now let's talk about 2 more things today. The tools, or at least in brief, and the qualifications. And let's start with qualifications. What kind of entry level is expected for somebody to at least begin playing with agents? How much of a developer background are you expected to have?
So there are a couple of things I think you need to be aware of. First of all, if you're just building tools for yourself that you're not exposing to anyone else, you don't need to code at all. You don't need to be able to code. All you need to do is tell the agent what you want. Tell it to do everything that's needed in order to get this off the ground, to get this working. And it will start helping you do that, and it will build the code for you. Now, if you start using the app that it creates, and actually it doesn't work, there's a bug in it, all you do is go back to the agent and tell it, look, there's a bug. This and this is the problem. Go figure it out. And it will fix it for you. And you can repeat that, repeat that, and repeat that until you have exactly the app you want, personal software. If you want to do this as a job, being able to code as a job right now, that industry is in turmoil because of these new tech solutions coming in. And therefore, entry level jobs are fewer and further between than they used to be. But if you want to work at an actual software organization or you want to build a company where you distribute your app to a lot of people, I would encourage you to learn to code as well so that you can work together with your AI agent. It will still do all the routine mundane tasks, but you can at least check it over and you understand what it's doing and you can organize the code the way you want to. But none of that is actually needed. I am a coder myself. If I build apps that I know I won't distribute to anyone, they're just for me, I never look at the code that that thing produces. The only thing I look at is, does it do what I want? Because I don't have to maintain that code. My agent maintains that code. So I don't care what it looks like. If I work in a team, it's different. Then you are a bit responsible for what things look like. And to be fair and to be clear, agents generally produce pretty good code. It's typically not bad, the things that they create. But still, you as a developer on a team are responsible for what you check in and what you create. And therefore, then I would recommend that you'd be able to check the work of the agent and to make sure that it conforms to organization standards or your own standards if you are basically starting your own company.
Mohammed, I'm still skeptical. What do you do with the code that your agent writes if you don't have the background in compiling and managing that code?
So all of that can be done by your agent. Remember, your agent can order your groceries, it can send your emails, it can monitor your text messages, it can browse the web, and it can compile your code, all of it. So if you say, I want this project, I want it to run on a Windows and a Mac computer, and I want this and that capability, what language would be best? It will give you an answer. And you can say, okay, go with that language. Now, make sure that you install all the necessary dependencies for me to be able to work with that language. Or even tell it start the project. Well, now it's done, and you're gonna say, okay, great, how do I run it? And it will tell you, well, you need this, and you need that, and you need this, and you tell it, get me what I need. I don't care about all of this stuff. Get me all of that.
So it will actually have access to your system and it will install it on your system, or is that still a sandbox?
So by default, all these agents run in a sandbox, but you can give it permission. So it will ask for commands where it needs to install something on your system. Do I have access? And you can say yes, and it will go and do that. It will be able, if you give it permission to reach out of the sandbox and do things on your system. And this may sound scary, but I do this all the time.
It is scary.
It stops being scary the second or third time around.
Let me give you a specific project and ask you to recommend a tool that will be accessible to a blind or visually impaired person to make that project happen. I'm trying to think of something very simple. So I am low vision, well, very, very low vision. I want my computer to display a digital running clock with hours, minutes, seconds in very large font so it will take the whole screen. It should be white and the background should be black. And I want to be able to bring this clock with a hotkey whenever I require that. So I'm turning my computer screen into a clock. That's all. How do you do this with an agent?
So what you just told me, that's all you need. You install either Claude Code or Codex or the Google version, which is, I believe, called Anti-Gravity. You install one of those tools. They're easy to find on the provider's website. You open up that tool and you paste exactly what you just said into the agent. So you're saying like, oh, I'm a non-technical user. I'm low vision. This is my need. Please help me. And it will start walking you through it. It will say, well, okay, so you want this to run on your computer with minimal fuss. You want to be able to bring this up with a hotkey. Here's what you need. Okay, what's the best way to go about this? And it will tell you. It will say like, oh, yeah, create a project in Codex or in Cloud Code. Give me access to a certain directory on your machine so that I can start building the code. And it will tell you exactly what to do. All you need is to know what you want. That's all you need.
And I'll end up with a compiled exe file, which could be run via shortcut or closed then with Alt F4.
Correct. Even you can wire it into JAWS if you want to. You say, oh, you know what? I want to actually be able to run this through JAWS with a JAWS script.
When you use those tools, and you mentioned several of them, again on the level of 1 to 10, what kind of accessibility would you expect? And for somebody who cares for accessibility, which one would you recommend as a starting point?
I myself have the most experience with codecs, but I know that Cloud Code is accessible as well, being used. Any of these tools can be used in the command line. And so there they are absolutely accessible because the command line is pretty much accessible. But they have their own graphical user interface as well, and those are accessible too. The beauty about, for example, codecs is codecs seems to be inaccessible because the answers that you get do not start with a heading. So it takes you quite a while to try to locate the beginning of an answer because it does not start with a heading. So there's not a simple keystroke to go back to. And these are all sort of web apps in normal apps, so you can use quick nav keys in them. And I used codecs a couple of days without being able to quickly jump to the beginning of an answer. And I got a little frustrated. And I said to codecs, look, this is unworkable for me. It takes me too long. How do I fix this? And it says, oh, you can just ask me to start every answer I give you with a heading. And I did that. And it said, okay, great. I've now to my instructions, I've added that all responses need to start with a heading level 1. And from now on, all responses that I get from codecs start with a heading level 1. That's all you need.
Mohammed Laachir, not an agent, but the true person. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So that was Mohammed Laachir. And speaking of agentic AI, I think this is just the beginning. If you, just like me, are interested in hearing more, please let us know by writing to connect@vispero.com. That address again, connect@vispero.com. Now, one of the major superpowers in using AI tools is the power of prompting. In fact, a good prompt makes all the difference. But how do you write a good prompt? And how do you improve a prompt that already exists? How do you tailor your prompt to your needs? These are some of the things that will be discussed in our upcoming webinar on July 2nd at noon Eastern Time in our Learning AI series. And to find out more and to register, go to freedomscientific.com/learnai. And then on July 16th, also at noon Eastern, we invite you to join us for a webinar on managing complex documents. We've all had that experience, a document with multiple sections and graphics and tables and complex layout. And when you have a bunch of those documents, that becomes even more interesting and more challenging. Fortunately, however, JAWS has the tools to make document management easy. For more on that, join us on July 16th at noon Eastern. And to register, go to freedomscientific.com/training. And I'm afraid we've got to wrap up for today for our June episode of Vispero Connect. We'll see you in July after the 2026 conventions. But for now, I'm Oleg Shevkun, wishing you all the best from all of us here at Vispero.